Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name is Mike Kanakis, and I'm joined by my co-host, Phil Bossman. And tonight we are going to be talking with James Brundage about uGit and some other cool stuff that he's got going on. Phil, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, and I'm super excited to hear what James has got. We've had a little primer of this when we were at the um, PowerShell Summit recently, this past May or April, end of April, early May, and so we were super excited to actually get James to kind of talk more about uGit and really seeing the power of what PowerShell can do in exploring new things beyond just what it comes in out of the box. And so, and with that, James, welcome to the group.
Welcome. Thank you. Let's talk about uGit. You've given your kitschy intros. I'll start off with mine. So we're here to talk about updating Git, and along the way, updating the way we build and think about modules. A couple of small things.
Sure. So James, just for our viewers, remember that some of these people are going to be seeing this on YouTube. Would you mind expunging a little bit on who you are and what kind of stuff you do for those who are unfamiliar with your name in the community?
Sure. I swear that's my first slide. If it lets me advance,
Oh,
there we go.
okay, sure.
All right. So I'm James Brundage with Start Automating. Start Automating is a tiny little PowerShell boutique consulting firm that helps people with their PowerShell problems. I've been scripting for about 16 years and counting. I helped build the PowerShell language at Microsoft and went on to form one of the first PowerShell consultancies. And I've kind of made a life's work out of basically growing the language. So I like making PowerShell getting PowerShell to the point where it can do more things for more people, getting more people into PowerShell, making everybody's lives easier, building fun tools, interesting toys. It's both a passion and a very rewarding virtuous cycle because I keep building fun stuff and then I keep getting jobs to go build more fun stuff and then I keep using that fun stuff to build other fun stuff. So, yeah, it's an interesting living, and today we're going to talk through one of these toys and how it was made. That toy is called uGit. The idea here is to be able to update Git itself. And like all developers, I've got to use Git. I do a show of hands, but it's a virtual user group, and that's kind of silly. But I'm pretty sure everybody else is in this boat too. Got to use Git. Doesn't mean you have to like it. However, I view that it means that I do have to get good at it. And to be really fair, Git is really great for source control. It's just a little awkward in PowerShell. And if you're not really familiar with PowerShell, this might not be so obvious. If you are, the why is pretty simple. It doesn't give you back objects, it gives you back text. This is actually a really important thing to understand in PowerShell if you are new to the language. PowerShell is fantastic working with objects. It's really great at parsing text, but until you have it in an object form, it's not as easy to work with things. And once you have it in an object form, you can sort, group, for each, etc. It's really wonderful. But I kind of make a living out of breaking down conceptual walls with PowerShell, so I start to ask, what if it doesn't have to be that way? PowerShell is pretty great at parsing after all. What if I could wrap Git and update it? So this begins the series of bad dad jokes and slide titles. But, I've wrapped a few. I often find that they're used sparingly. If I write a command that says invoke Git or use Git, I'll almost never remember to type it compared to the Git that I already know. If I spend the time to learn a command line, I'm not going to want to learn a commandlet. This is an important realization as a PowerShell developer. No matter how much we might want the world to see everything through the lens of commandlets, a lot of people have sunk a lot of time and effort into learning command line. They expect that to be able to work. We thread this needle. Can we make it so that when they run Git, we get back objects? And yeah, if we get a little crafty. So one of the things that I find very endlessly satisfying about PowerShell is that always coming up with new tricks. And this one I call command interception. And it is built off of this trick, a couple of tools, and a few techniques. So let's start off understanding the trick. This is pretty easy to get if you stop to think about it. PowerShell resolves commands in this order: alias, function, commandlet, external script, and application. Which means if I have a command called git, it's the last thing it'll check. Any of these would work. They'd be preferred. Okay, so if I define an alias, using it in PowerShell will override the application. I think PowerShell had hit this before at some point because really early on builds of PowerShell core, it had wget alias to invoke REST method, and it drove people nuts. But it can be used for good if you know how. So you can still pass down the arguments using splatting. And again, I do a show of hands, but it's a virtual group. Splatting is this great little technique to be able to pass down arguments. You can take a collection, either a dictionary of named arguments or a list of arguments, and pass them down. So here's a very, very simple example of what this trick can be. I write a function git. I call get command git. I restrict it to application, and I pass the arg. And this will look like git, run git, but it'll run it through PowerShell. And that means I can intercept its results, put a pipeline at the end of this, all sorts of fun stuff. This is a good point to stop before we kind of go into demo mode. Does command interception make sense to everybody?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to ask some questions as far as, so at this point you're just defining a function, and then because of that order in which you defined before, is that aliases will go first, then functions and stuff. And so if we define a function, we can effectively overload. I think that's the right term, right? In the idea that you can overload what's happening down below. So like you can your module
intercept its output and assign it to variables or treat it however I'd like.
And then, so in your example there, you're basically saying get command git. So it's just like invoking the git.exe process, right? That's really what's happening. Is you're defining.
Yeah, and this is actually a really slow way to write it. I normally would resolve the command with execution context, or I already have it saved. But this basically is go get me the command git that is an application and run that, but pass whatever arguments I had. Okay, and I just kind of what if this one day. I said, okay, what would happen if this works? Oh, I can do fun things with that.
So I wanna even take a step further back, because actually, so that's a good question. So David Stein is asking, is this similar to how Crescendo basically works behind the scenes? And I kind of think, well, that I don't know. Can you answer that, Phil or James? I'm not 100% familiar with Crescendo to really talk about the innards of how that's passing data back and forth.
I would doubt it. I am not intimately familiar with Crescendo. I did talk with Mr. Helmek a lot before Crescendo was created. But part of the kind of differing page is I don't find that, and this is a problem I run into with application wrappers a lot. I don't find that wrapping the application ends up being fruitful, because I don't find that I'll remember to use the wrapped application. So Crescendo is in the game of basically saying, I'm going to take this command line and I'm going to turn that into a commandlet. Okay? And in a lot of cases, process its output, although I'm not sure how Crescendo would handle something like Git, where you have basically differing returns for differing types of things. But Crescendo is still in the game of trying to build you and invoke Git, or get something, or so on and so forth, right? This is playing a different game. This is saying, I want this to actually be Git, and I want Git to work 100% normally, except in the cases where I want it to act like I'd like it to act. And that's a little craftier.
And so this is exactly sort of the reasoning as to why I wanted to have you present to our group, because for those that are not familiar, where James is going to go from here, I think James has a mind that works a little differently than how most people do. James is exploiting some techniques here to use what's given to him in the best possible way. I never even considered that an alias is going to execute before the application, and I can create an alias with the exact same name as an application and not have to remember essentially a new set of commands, and it'll work the way I want it to. It's a really brilliant idea. And so the people that are watching at home, you're going to probably see a little bit more of this stuff as he gets into more of the stuff he's talking about. And that's what I think is the interesting thing here, James, is, you're a brilliant guy, but what's interesting is when you get into the stuff and we kind of figure out how you think, like the slide you had before this, oh my God, I think it speaks to every admin that's ever had to work with Git. It's a tool. It works awesome. I know I have to use it. It sucks on the syntax. I have to get better at it. I wish it could work like PowerShell. The 5 bullet points you put up there, I think sums up everybody's existence with Git. Everybody has learned to use Git because they have to, not because they want to, right? They live with the limitations of the text-based input, especially coming from the PowerShell world like we do, and living with the inadequacies of using Git with its own syntax. And here you are, you come along and you put this like smooth paste over the top to make it like function like a normal PowerShell thing. I think that's such an interesting way, the way you've picked that apart and figured out a better way to do the same thing.
Thank you. Every once in a while, when I figure out a trick, I figure out a really useful trick, and command interception is a really useful trick. Because yes, you could do this for any exe. You could do this for all exes if you wanted. It would be a little bit cumbersome, but you could. And this opens up all sorts of interesting doors because it lets you build pipeline-aware versions of those exes. It lets you make every one of those exes work better from PowerShell without having to get people to relearn that exe. And you can just, hey, buddy, import this module. You can still use Git exactly like you used to, but it gets better.
So you could almost like add some parameters that don't really exist on the fly. And then if it's not passed you could just keep on going.
Okay, so that one's a little bit more controversial. Yes, you can. Whether you should is something that I look forward to you guys giving me input on.
Okay. But that's a good answer.
We'll get to there when we get to extensibility, and kind of how that portion of the module is built. But yes, you could add parameters to this thing that you're overloading too. The question is, really, do you want to, and will it create unknown conflicts that make it so that what they can use on the command line doesn't work? And to give you a really simple example of this, where this can get really messy really easily, even though it's a trade-off that I decided to eventually take here, is when you add commandlet binding. When you add commandlet binding, you get error action and error variable. Great, right? Well, you got also verbose and debug. And PowerShell will interpret git-v as git-verbose, unless you do some extra magic. And while this module does include that extra magic, this is the sort of awkward game you start to play. Yeah. If they have short parameter names, you can, Okay. Just close it before hope escapes. That's the important part. So on with the opening of Pandora's box. Let's get a taste for how this all works. Proof of concept. Let's see in action before we go and open the hood. And I'm going to go bring up code for a couple different things. I'm actually going to show it being useful for me for a second. I'm going to give a taste of other things here. All right, so I got this module here, PS Minifier.
I'm going to have to make that.
How do I make the font bigger again?
Control plus.
Yeah, Control plus.
Control plus.
Yeah.
Good.
Uh,
All right. So we got PS Minifier here. PS Minifier is a module that, well, minifies as PowerShell. I've got some changes that I wanted to check into it. I've already got uGit loaded. I'm going to git status. I'm going to point out one of the things that it shows us differently here for a second. Well, two. One, grouped by the git root. Two, colorizes whether you're on the branch. If you're on main or master, it'll show in yellow. If you're on another branch, it'll show in, well, technically it'll show in warning or it'll show in verbose. Okay? Untracked files, these are actual files. They look like PowerShell files because they are PowerShell files. In fact, let's go assign status into variable, untracked here, get member. There's file, there's directory. Right?
So you created a custom object for that? Like there's like that status is your own custom uGit object type?
That is correct.
Okay.
We'll get into the how in a second. But here's one that I use all the time.
Let me just start. I really appreciate this module. Okay. I just watched you type one command and I'm like, God damn, that's so much better than what I have to do. And so obviously I'll be using this module after tonight, but it's just like, it's such, well, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's such a brilliant idea for something that we've had to deal with. I can't believe none of us have thought of it sooner, but kudos to you for doing this, because now this piece of crap Git commands that I have to deal with come back with objects that I can actually do something with.
Yeah, we're going to do something with it. You know, don't get too excited. It's just the initial demo.
I know. I'm just saying I appreciate this a lot.
All right. So we got a type name on this Git status object. That's important later because it lets us decorate the type, give it properties and methods. Okay, all these note properties, those come from parsing the output, the methods, put in the extended type system. We can select star and see all the stuff. Most of the commands will have a original line sort of property. I should standardize them, but yeah, output will differ depending on what you've got, but it's a really handy thing to be able to do. Really nice, especially when it comes to, say, the log. Okay, you got a whole bunch of log objects. I'm ready to get this particular show on the road, so I want to actually get everything that hasn't merged yet. Now, when I'm getting stuff that hasn't merged, I'm actually looking backwards through the log for a thing that is not a pull request. Okay, so this could be improved. There are some repos where this doesn't work. Let me know if you have a reliable repo for that so I can kind of continue to improve it. But in this scenario, I've got just these nice 3 changes here. So I'm going to go ahead and select object, expand property, commit, message. Right. All right, so I got my nice little commit message there. And I'm going to go take this into psminifier.psd1.
Nice to see that you don't have your commit messages as change 1, change 2, change 3.
Oh, like, no,
like my coworkers.
This does encourage better commits. Definitely. Embarrass them this way. So I'm going to go ahead and put this commit log here. I'm actually getting better in Markdown than most of the other modules here. I was adding support for this other transpiler built around PowerShell. We'll come back to that in a future one if you want. I'm just going to bump the module version here right quick. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the change log because, you know, I want to be thorough here. And I'm going to copy and paste this here into there. Okay. All set. And just taking our quick look around the block or git diff. And again, it looks basically like Git, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. So First diff here, the changes to the changelog. Second diff here is the changes to the PSD1. That has the exact changes, the lines they started and stopped. So a lot of information here that you can work with. A lot of stuff, just basically by taking a few Git commands and parsing their output. I did actually research this a little bit. Call this whatever you will, but Git does not localize. If you were using Git in, France, it is still in English. So
All right. So
this should work basically perfectly anywhere you are. Again, if it doesn't, let me know.
Got a good question here. Adam,
all right.
Adam asks, and this is like a good stop point. So it's like,
All
wait,
right.
so is this not using Git at all? Is this essentially a replacement for Git? And so, no, we're using Git. We're just taking the data and bringing it back as objects instead of just straight up text, right?
Yep.
Am I correct in that?
You are correct.
Yeah. So Adam, we are using Git. We are just taking the data and we are parsing the data and putting some PowerShell structure around it instead of just leaving text.
Yeah. So effectively, like almost that command that he gave before, you call, he's taking the variables that you're passing into it, or the parameters you're passing into it, into Git, the process itself, and then whatever the process.exe, Git.exe returns, he's then parsing that text back and then giving you back.
That is correct.
But here's the benefit to fill in the gaps here, like Adam was
you don't have to. That's a huge one.
Before, the old sort of way that you use Git, you get text that comes back. So now James is pulling this back and he's turning it into objects, and he's allowing us to use PowerShell. Now, going forward, you get to use PowerShell to do things that you couldn't do in Git easily. Searching, he did a where object. He did, I think I saw an expand property there, right? So we get to do more stuff than we would do if it was just straight up Git, because now it's PowerShell aware.
Yeah. And, there are all sorts of things that I could do here just to kind of prove that point. The log's actually a fantastic one. Here's one of my favorite examples here. I'm going to take the log here, and I'm going to group object at date, day of week. I have busy Mondays. Apparently, I don't hate Mondays on this project. But that's just Thursdays. On this project. That's just on this project. I would do this for all my modules, but it would probably take a while. So dir get random count 50. Oh, actually, I'll just go for it. We'll do the draw demo. Remember I said you could build a pipeline-aware version of these commands? Thank you. Here we go. A lot of things here aren't repositories. All repo logs there. 4,138 commits across all those modules. Again, I can pipe a directory or series of directories into Git, and this will work. In fact, if I pipe a directory into Git, it'll push into that directory and then run. If I pipe a file into Git, it'll append it as an argument. I can also do something like dir star.ps1 and pipe to git add. I'm not gonna right now because, as my commit messages might indicate, I would never do such a thing. But yeah. I'm finishing this particular one up. We got our status here. I've got those new changes here. You can see that they're modified. So status again here, and status untracked. this unstaged. Let's go ahead and add the changelog and the minifier. And we're going to go ahead and commit that. Updating module version 1.1.4 and changelog. It's nice, right? Again, these are real objects. One of my favorite things on commits here, I probably should have gone to show you this, but I can actually amend a commit. So I can have this nice little method that's returned on a commit. And if I remember to capture it into a variable, I can go ahead and amend that, or I can just go ahead and say amend here. Message. All right. So now that I'm ready to go, I'm going to go push. This is where it actually shows both a little bit of how it's working and some other benefit of how it's great to be in PowerShell instead of pure Git, because it actually shows errors as errors. And this makes them really clear. And then it'll show the remaining information below. It'll actually also show hints as warnings. So I can go do the push. There we go. Go create a pull request. And if I didn't have CI/CD, that would take a couple seconds. I would be done right now, but I do, so I'm going to let that run. But we're going to call that demoed and done. Oh, wait, I'm going to show you one more joy here with Git in a second. If I can close out or magnify this guy. Here we go. Remember Git logs objects. Okay. I have a lot of different things that I can do on each object. I can compare one to another. So if I go ahead and look at log 1 diff, I can see the difference. And then now log 2 diff, and so on and so forth. Okay. Well, the one that I really love is that you can actually archive these. So if I wanted to say to my boss, hey, I wanted to get that outputted as zip. There you go. And it kind of gets even better because I can go ahead and say, give me start with PS1s. And if I go, oh yeah, I can type that to item. Probably going to show up on my other screen. And I have, of course, too many windows open. So let's go ahead and click. Just pop here and go look at an Explorer. There we go.
Oh, nice.
That's just got the PS1s from there. I would just wanted the markdown files. Actually, it's probably not going to work because I still got the zip open in Explorer. So there you go. And I can do this the whole way back. You don't need to know any of the Git magic underneath to make that happen, even though, I mean, if we're being honest, this is it. It's just running Git archive.
But so there was a comment in the chat from a friend of mine, Clem, who was talking and basically said, so you still need to remember the Git syntax that I quote unquote love so much, sarcasm. So, but I think honestly, this was your point.
Again, this
was your point about where Crescendo differs. Crescendo, you have to learn a new syntax. This way, we're using the same Git commands. They just have more functionality.
I
let's
mean,
say.
I'm getting a lot closer to deciding to just say the hell with it and start to intrude on Git's native command syntax. The question really is how much you all agree with me. Because, again, it's possible to do so. It's just a little bit of a quagmire.
I
Well-
think for onboarding new developers and new DevOps engineers, etc., staying with the standard Git syntax makes perfect sense. What you're really achieving here is the ability to make use of that data later for creating custom reports or things like that are perhaps a little bit easier to do in the PowerShell syntax than trying to parse a bunch of strings.
Yeah, and to get this, to be 100% crystal clear here, it's still parsing a bunch of strings. Just you don't have to parse a bunch of strings. uGit does that for you in a way that's nice and extensible, and you could write your own thing for a Git command that I don't support. Give me a PR.
Yeah, I'm playing with it now, like playing with it more, than I did before. And so some of the other, Git kind of posh Git, like it doesn't like posh Git, or posh Git, well, it does a bunch of stuff with your prompt and stuff like that. And it doesn't, not that it doesn't work, but it's like, oh, okay, so I need to write a new prompt so that I can invoke this one instead, because the other one's giving me some stuff.
Yeah, I forget exactly what the heck there was with PoshGit. It's not perfect with it.
No.
But that's also mostly PoshGit's problem.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not trying to care about PoshGit. Fun factoid here, we'll come back to this later, but all that nice formatting that you saw, that's built off of the same tool that the formatting for PoshGit is built on.
Mm-hmm.
PoshGit, Keith Shelby, Scott Hanselman, and Keith Shelby reached out like 7 or 8 years ago to try to get some help understanding how they could do formatting for the prompt and for, Git itself. And I spent some time helping. And that was my contribution to the Git world for a long time. And then I had to get half decent at Git. And I said, this still doesn't solve the problem that I have, which is I want to be able to have Git work naturally, but be able to do PowerShell things with its output.
Mm-hmm.
And, that might not be everybody's choice. I do think that there is a lot of benefit to not making people relearn. I think if I can thread the needle even further and let it be mostly the Git that people are used to with a few bells and whistles on top, then it would be easier to get adoption. But, hopefully the numbers for this module will go way up as a result of this presentation. It's so far been a cool toy that has not been getting tons of traction because I haven't been spending tons of time talking about it. But it is really, really cool. I would advise you all to use it. I built it in a few days and have been using it every day since, and it's really sort of changed my Git workflow. Just in little ways, like I showed, like, oh, hey, I can just roll up all the commit messages I have, and then I have my release notes. Oh, speaking of which, let's go over to PS Minifier. Don't forget the satisfying part here.
Before you jump ahead, I just want to see, like you wrapped a lot of cool things in those last couple of demos, right? There was a lot of assumed PowerShell knowledge there. Not necessarily super challenging, but wheres and invoking stuff. And I just want to make sure, like with the people that are in attendance, is everybody sort of aware of what he's doing and how this works? And so you're using the same syntax. You just get to layer on top the PowerShell concepts that you learned to be able to move the data around in the way that you want. And it's taking all that back, and the module then essentially passes all those arguments to the tool, so you don't have to figure out how to do all that text manipulation. Are we all good, the people that are in attendance, before James goes on to bigger and better? Do we have anybody that has any questions? I got a thumbs up from one person. All right, cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. Anybody? Just want to see if we caught
All
command
right. I
interpretation. We
think
got
we got
that.
enough action for a bit. We'll be coming back to various other
Yeah,
parts.
yeah.
We're already half an hour in, so
Yeah.
we'll see what time we make through the whole talk. But again,
Cool.
please don't be shy. Ask questions. This is stuff that people aren't used to. It's a different way of working, but it has a lot of benefits. The biggest one is you're not going to really have to teach somebody else a bunch of different syntax. You just say, hey, take what you've already learned to Git and apply it this way.
Well, I have this interesting situation where I have new people coming onto my team and they don't know Git. And so I have, let's just say, some people that are a little on the lazier side and they want to do their commits through the VS Code interface. And I don't really love that because when you get into trouble, you don't kind of know how to get yourself out of trouble. Right.
Yes.
So,
and that is why everybody eventually needs to learn Git.
right.
You
So
put it very, very, really perfectly. It's like you can get away with doing stuff in VS Code for a while until you get into trouble, and then you're pretty screwed.
you got to go call your friend around the corner who does know the Git commands to figure out how to unwind what mistake happened somewhere in VS Code. And so
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to
tired
kind
of
of,
being at that friend around the corner, man. I am tired.
well, so I wanted to sort of teach the guys and say, look, you need to learn Git commit, Git add, Git status, commit, branching. And when you know how to do that stuff and you're fairly comfortable, if you want to go do it in VS Code, fine, but at least have some sort of base pinnings. And so I could work with this with them, and it doesn't take them away, like Clem was saying, it doesn't take them away from knowing Git. You're not teaching them something other than Git. It's just Git with better opportunities to do more stuff. And so it's a really interesting idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
All
I
right.
really like the fact that there's a lot of tab completion. Holy mackerel!
Yeah. That can be nice. I gotta say I could actually possibly do a lot better with tab completion in Git. But I need to get back to that topic at some point. You guys all can tell me how cool this is to you and how much more investment you'd want in this space. Because right now this is a pretty small module. It's just built in ways that make it very useful and flexible.
Well,
All
let
right.
me ask you in reverse. Where do you see gaps in the module? Because for someone who's never seen this before that might be watching this tonight, they may not understand the potential and where there's room for improvement, right? So where do you think the weak areas are that you think could benefit from some more minds that are looking at something?
Well, I think there's always room for more coverage. I think that most of the core Git commands that you're going to use in your day-to-day are covered by uGit at this point. But if you have more interesting things you know how to do with Git, that's great. I think that one of the other really strong benefits of this that we'll get to when we get to extensibility and how it's authored is that you can add examples. So if you just have good working examples of how you're using Git that you wanted to show off, I'm happy to add them to the module here. All right.
Oh, I get it now. So would it be safe to say that you built the module based on your knowledge with Git and you're pretty good at Git, but if there's someone that's like a real strong advanced Git user, they may uncover some things that you didn't code yet to cover.
Yeah, I mean,
it.
just kind of like giving a little, tip here, like let's say Git branch here. Got a few examples of how you can use Git branch. I like this one. Get all branches where it's not the current branch and the branch isn't in master or main and delete them. Real handy bit. Just giving some good examples to the, given commands that will exist. That'd be really helpful for people adopting Git if you're wanting to help share your knowledge, because any Git command that you have will work normally here.
Okay. Makes sense.
So, yeah, the other question I keep coming back to again is how important it is to you to expand out tab completion for Git and to add parameters to Git itself. The other thing that I've been thinking of, but I'm not sure if I want to do yet, is something to wait on Git operations. But yeah, I'm still making up my mind about a lot of things. I'm open to a lot of suggestions.
Well, I don't know anybody I can't imagine anybody who's going to come on and say, you know what, tab completion doesn't work for me. Right? I think that just makes life easier for everyone.
Yeah, but it's a can of worms with Git. But we got other cans of worms to get into. Let's try to get
Sure.
the show back on the road here for a second. We got our taste, we're going to pop open the hood now. Let's get how it works. It's a module made up of a very few number of commands. Outgit, useGit, and get uGit extension. Intercepting Git is really only part of the problem. The other part is handling each Git command. Hold on a second. All right. We could do this in one script. That would be a little foolhardy. It would get very messy. It is better to build piecemeal. What I mean by that? Well, piecemeal is this PowerShell module that adds extensibility to any PowerShell module. I write a few tools like this. I'm going to bring this up in browser. So I've had this sort of problem for a while. I've needed to dynamically add parameters from some given other scripts, and I've wanted to have a way that I can write a command that can be extended.
Can you zoom in on
And
that
so
too?
sure.
Yeah.
This is briefly covering it before we show how it's used in here. But basically, I wanted to allow a given function in PowerShell to have implementation across several different files, not just files that I wrote, but files that anybody writes. Okay? And what piecemeal lets me do is basically define either a module name or a pattern of a file that it'll recognize as an extension. Okay, so we're going to go back over to uGit here for a second, and we're going to see the extensions directory. So git branch.uGit extension, that's an extension. These are all the extensions that are there. Okay, each of these handles a different scenario for Git. And that way, instead of having one function that stretches on forever, I got a bunch of little functions, or a bunch of little scripts more properly, that can handle each of the different scenarios. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back there. You can make your own copy of piecemeal by using install piecemeal. There's also a GitHub action. So I'm sorry, I'm going to keep flipping back and forth here for a second. But I recently switched around to using this. So here's uGit's piecemeal. It installs piecemeal for uGit with the extension module alias of Git, which means that the files could be .gitextension.ps1 or .ugetextension.ps1. The extension noun is uGit extension. So instead of get extension, it'll become get uGit extension. It'll return type name of uGit extension, and it'll be written to this file. And what'll happen is that my action will see this file, run this, then check in any changes. So that way it stays always up to date. That's pretty helpful. Oh, boy, did it just jump ahead. Not sure what happened there. Let me see if I can get that running again. Oh, we're going to not use the mouse for a bit. Over clicking here. Sorry. This is driving me nuts for a second. Okay, here is where we were. Oh. So this is how get uGit extension was written, right? And this lets us do a few things. Find extensions related to a given command. In this case, it's kind of cheating because they're related to anything. It's going to be out Git. And determine if those extensions are valid for the given Git command. So let's take a look at an extension or two and see it in action. Let's pick a recent one, reflog. Okay. Well, one of the really fun realizations building out piecemeal, and one of the really great answers to that riddle about how I build extensible commandlets is that I can kind of attribute hijack commandlet. Commandlet is the attribute used for C# commandlets that says what the name of the commandlet should be, but it doesn't have any actual meaning in a normal script block. But by putting this on a script block, I can basically say this script relates to outGit. That part makes sense?
I'm not sure how that relates in that fashion. And so what do you mean by it relates to it? So it will call this extension?
In most cases, yeah, outGit will go call this, right? In
Okay.
other cases, it could just be that this could return a result for this thing. What you do with the relationship is up to you. Thing of it is, this says I'm related to another command.
Okay.
And once you have a relationship between those two commands established, you can go ask, what are the commands related to outGit? That's what piecemeal gives you. So
Okay.
what are these things that are going to extend my functionality, and which ones are related to each other? And the next part it gives you is what's valid. Okay? Valid also is contextual. It's something that you can just ask of an extension at any given moment. Hey, I've got this piece of information. Do you consider yourself a valid extension given this information? And it's also it's doing that same attribute hijacking trick. Validate script and validate pattern. The normal validation attributes you'd have on a parameter, they don't mean anything if they're applied to a script block, but I'm making them mean something. So I'm saying that this command is valid if this pattern is valid. What I'm actually doing in uGit and outGit is I'm going and saying, what commands can I call that have something that matches the command line I was passed? So if I run git reflog, this will say, yep, I handle it. Then I've got a good old-fashioned output type attribute. These don't mean tons to PowerShell yet, but they're really handy to put on just for good old self-documentation purposes. Okay, so this one's pretty simple, except for the regex, and we'll get to some of that in the next slide. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect all the lines, and I'm going to declare a regex that could match each potential reflog. I'm going to go turn uGit off for a second here to show how this looks, if I can ever find the right tab. So I took it back over to there. So move module uGit. There's my reflog. I guess they do it a little bit more colorized than I am at this point, but I can change that. And import module log. And there's my reflog. And this basically works by taking each line and saying, does it match this? So I go collect all the lines. If I didn't have any lines, I just return. If the lines didn't match this, then I return because I assume, hey, I'm not the most brilliant Git developer in the universe. Maybe there are ways that use this command that don't match this pattern. And if so, I don't want it to break for those people. And then I walk over each of the lines returned. And this is, I like this trick. This is a pretty new trick as well. I just match the particular regex, and then I create a ordered hash table, and I add on matches. And because matches is a hash table, I can combine those two hash tables together, which really niftily works. Because if you know your regex, this is a named capture group. So this is the hash. This is the name. This is the number. That's the command. And that's the message. Okay. Now in regex, you'll also get a capture group for 0, the whole match, which I'm going to remove. I'm going to set this property get root, which is magically there, but that's where I am at the moment in Git. This is useful if I'm ever going to do anything with the object. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a PS type name. And then I go ahead and cast it into a custom object and I'm done. So that's how Git reflog works. Go back again to my output. I can go look, type that number, and I have the command get root hash message name and number. Hash all this. So all that sort of kind of making sense.
Yeah, just yeah, it's a lot to take in.
That last one went fast.
That's okay. I think we can just leave it at one extension and go back to the regex thing. It looks like my mouse isn't being such a pain now, so that's good. You might note we still have to do a lot of parsing. Most uGit extensions are written using regular expressions. Validate pattern is my go-to to determine if you match. Now, I'm going to pop back over to my thing here for a second. This is actually about as complicated as you'll need to get here. This is a start anchor. So basically means this starts with git space reflog. Okay. That's easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would advise keeping it about as simple if you go build your own, or you can just, open an issue and ask me to do it. I'm very open to I don't want to bother the parse or to figure out how to parse this, but I'd really like this git command to output as objects. If anybody has that request.
I have a question.
Sure.
In that pattern that you just showed us, the get reflog, would you see yourself wanting to eventually protect against somebody putting 2 spaces between the get and the reflog in that pattern?
No, because that's not something that they control. That's something Git controls.
Okay.
The Git executable is always returning the same pattern of output. That's the trick here.
Okay, so this isn't on the invocation side. This is on the return side.
Yeah. This isn't anything that they do with it. This is to be clear, if I wanted to add parameters to Git itself, I'm overriding useGit. OutGit, that's just output.
Got it. Thanks.
No worries. Actually, it's a good point for a detour here for a second. I don't think I covered how brief the magic is that lets it work as Git. That's it. I have this function useGit, and its alias is Git. Oh, I guess I should also say this kind of cool thing. I added support for should process. I didn't show that earlier. But let's take a on that just because I like my good PowerShell support. So git log what if. Turn back what I'm going to run and git log confirm. So yeah, you have what if and confirm for Git. You're welcome.
Could you show that? Could you show that what if output one more time? It went by pretty fast.
Yeah.
The actual command.
There. All it is the argument that I was going to be passing to Git. So if I say git log n 100, that's the arguments that it'd be passing to Git.
Sweet. Thank you.
And also what if itself, ironically. And should process or confirm is actually going to go say, basically, for each thing that I'd run, do you want to run that? So if I had said dir star.ps1 pipe to git rm dash confirm true, because I'm not that crazy. Sorry. I'm that crazy to try this thing twice. And
There's
say
some finger
L
memory
no
for
to
it.
all. There we go. And look, I still have my files.
Woohoo.
Oh, you're welcome.
Fortune
What if
favors the bold.
confirm are nice to have if you remember to use them. Any more questions?
I think people are very impressed with the work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think if you go away from a slide deck for long enough, the punchlines don't land. Because here's the original: most uGet expressions are written using or extensions are written using regular expressions. Please don't be terrified.
No.
Let's highlight a quick trick or two. The one I highlighted already was if you have matches will be a hash table of what matched. And named captures are your friend. So is as, which can turn strings and numbers and dates into numbers without that much trouble. So, like if you had a simple numeric value back and you just said dash as double, you'd have that actual number there. And the commit date that comes back in, well, I mean, we could turn get off again for a second. Remove module get log. That's the format their commit date comes back in. Wasn't the easiest format to parse. I've had nicer. But I can actually turn them into PowerShell.
So I guess I jumped into the GitHub repo and looking at the git log extension, and kind of, so I guess coming back to it is that, yeah, that big regex is, you're creating it and then just parsing from there what comes back and then passing it through this regex.
Yeah. You don't have to use regex if you don't want to. You can parse it all by hand in whatever way you'd like. I don't care. As long as it works and doesn't make Git output disappear, I don't mind. I mean, like, the end of the day, the benefit here isn't performance. The benefit is the actual data. So we're taking a couple of extra microseconds or even seconds to get it. Getting it back as objects lets us do stuff with it that's useful and valuable. Like, I mean, again, not to hark on just something as simple as commit date and git log, but you can graph productivity throughout the day with that bare information just by turning it into an actual date instead of the format they have it. You can find out who is or is not the most active coder. Like,
yeah. Just want to say, James, that looking at this, and you obviously put a lot of thought and effort into this was needed because Git is a bit of a pain to deal with because of the fact that it does spit out text. But what you've done here is you've not optimized CPU time, you've optimized the user time, and that's much more important in the grand scheme of things.
Amen.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, that's one of the major understandings of programming, period. You're not always trying to be fast, you're trying to be simpler. Or easier, whatever your goal might be. In this case, easier and better than normal Git, and a good gateway drug into PowerShell. Because if you are a regular Git user and you don't really know this PowerShell thing that well, this could really improve your Git productivity. And it could give you a really easy way to learn PowerShell. And not the version of PowerShell that we've kind of all been preaching nonstop for the last 15 odd years of everything has to be verb, noun, paired. But the version of PowerShell is like, hey, man, PowerShell has all these really cool features other languages don't, like this object pipeline. Look at what happens once you turn it into data. Everything's data in PowerShell.
The only thing I can say on this is, why didn't we have this 10 years ago? You know what I mean?
What you respond, we did have it 10 years ago.
No, I mean, this exact output from Git, like this would have been amazing 10 years ago. Like it would just completely changed how we all work with Git. But the fact that we have it now, that's the important part. And
yeah,
I look forward to teaching people, including people in school, how to use Git, how to use PowerShell, and use PowerShell with Git, and using this. This is an amazing amount of work, and I expect it wasn't a significant amount of work for you to actually get this done. Right?
Not terribly. It's a pretty small repo. We'll come back to it in a bit, but I was just checking how long it's been since I've been using it, and it's really young. It's only been around, 4 months now? Not even. And this just kind of came to me as a possibility. Tried to see what I could do with it. Proved the concept, and have been enjoying it ever since.
And I'm really, really, really thankful that you've done it. As soon as I seen that this was tweeted out by Mike earlier on today, I was like, yes, I will make sure I attend this, because I think this will be incredibly useful to me and to others. And yeah, I was not wrong in that.
Well, thank you.
Initial thought.
To Ryan's point,
let
there's
me know
a certain
if there
amount
are
of
other Git commands you want supported.
I think to Ryan's point is he was having some fun, basically saying that we've all endured some pain with Git, right? And so 10 years ago, you wouldn't have this pain that you have as part of your daily work cycle with why didn't that Git command work, or what was that?
Oh.
It's not so much what is the syntax, because this is still the syntax, but what ultimately comes here out of this is Git becomes a little bit more forgiving, right? You can use some of the benefits of PowerShell to bend Git to do things that, like you said, without the module, is a lot of like parsing by hand to do.
Yeah, I think the way I'd say it, Mike, is it makes Git become less of a Git, of a tool to use.
Yeah, uGits make Git less of a Git. Use Gits together, make Git less of a Git. You got it now.
You need to use, James, to promote this, and we'll go forward and promote it wide.
I mean, maybe only a quarter of the people on this call might get this ref, but like I cannot think of this module without thinking of my cousin Vinny. Two Utes.
What's a Ute?
Yeah, a Ute. I'm a Jersey boy, so I did just realize while you're talking that I got this really nice example pipeline that I can build now, because I did add this to Piecemeal earlier, the ability to get back examples from extensions. So here's another way to learn Git. And you give me more extensions, we can add more of these. I don't mind adding a few other helper commands to uGit if it takes off. If they already are in for the penny of being able to get Git as objects, it's easy enough to get them in for the pound as using other associating commands. So tell me how far you want me to take this one. Right now, it's a fun pastime.
So
I think what needs to happen, unfortunately, is the people on this call who are like, wow, that's really cool. They need to install the module and get a taste of using it, and then be like, oh yeah, it would be cool to have that. That's the part that's missing right now. Meaning, you would love to know what could be added, but nobody's had the time to absorb it yet. Right.
And I'll be
this is
honest,
definitely
this is how simple my profile is right now. This is literally the only module I'm making sure I always use in code, because it does change a lot of my day-to-day flow with Git. And it's prettier. Sorry, Git. But there's a lot more colorization in uGit than there is in regular Git.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things that, you know, we've all said this from years and years gone, you know, PowerShell is that language that helps everybody be exponentially more productive than what they were before. And a tool like this, again, adds to that.
Yeah, let me actually show one other crazy example here for a second. Let me get
I like
a
PowerShell because it makes
relatively.
me lazy. I don't want to do the work.
I want to find the quick start repo for this. So quick start. Yeah, this is a nice enough, large enough repo to show one of the other joys here. So here, because you know, I do love my PowerShell little bits and pieces. So let's go back up to another directory where I don't care as much.
I always have a C temp.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and git clone. And I don't know if you've ever cloned a large repository, but it can take a bit.
That is just that's the icing on the cake. That
Wow, look at that. That looks pretty. That's awesome.
Now you still have to remember to pass double dash progress. I'm not that smart yet, but if you do remember, it'll be a nicer time for you. So it's a fun module. It really is.
you
Not bad for its
sat down
size.
and thought about it and put the time and invested into it, and you know, from what I've seen so far, you know, yeah, there's a common quote, like, you need to know 10% of Git to be really good at your job. If you know 25% of Git, you're a master. If you know 50% of Git, you're probably lying, because there's nobody that knows 100% of Git.
Yeah, no, there really isn't, and I definitely don't. I just know enough of Git to be able to wrap these commands that I use all the time and turn them into nice objects that I can do stuff with.
And I think, looking at what you've got there, you've got probably just about everything that I can think of. I'm sure others in the community, once they start looking at this and playing with it and using it in day-to-day work, they'll find things to help expand on it. And I'm more than certain that it won't just be you that will be maintaining this in future. You know, there'll be people that will want to contribute to this.
Cool. I'm also more than certain that this will spend more time in progress than I want it to, but I'm not going to control C it. I'm just going to get back to the slide deck.
James, question
way off
for you.
course at this point. Yes, sir.
And why not just make -- progress the default parameter on a git clone command?
The short answer is because at the moment that I am calling out to the extension for outgit, I don't have a way that I intercept arguments and add them yet. That's
Okay.
one of the things I'm debating. If you really want me to add extra arguments to Git, I can add extra arguments to Git. The question is, do you really want me to do this? And this is be your like collective cue to just unmute your mics and shout yes.
Well, I think it's
No.
situational, right? I think, like on that last example, I can't think of a reason not to see the progress, because even if it's a short module, it just goes away.
Yeah.
If it's a long module, it just takes away that, well, something must be happening. I'll just wait.
But if you,
Eventually,
I was going to say, if we keep it within the realms of the way that PowerShell works, and instead of doing like dash progress on Git and doing dash progress, you know, that in my mind makes a bit more sense from a ecosystem point of view, because Git's already complicated enough. Do we need to extend Git and make it even more complex and complicated?
Yeah, But I think
cells.
like double dash progress is such an interesting scenario. I guess I will leave it on the screen while we talk about it.
I mean, it could act
Because
as an
you
alias.
would want it to be a default, and it's not. Even if you add it as a PowerShell command, you wouldn't want to have to specify it. So
I mean,
there it's done, and pretty colors. So
I mean, my view with dash progress was, that could be an alias, to actually getting progress output. We can do all of this within PowerShell that easily enough, as a wrapper around the Git executable in this module.
yeah, I think what the distinction between what you're asking for and what Mike is asking for, what you're asking for is the ability to have dash foo, which I'm more inclined to be able to do. What Mike is asking for is the ability to always run double dash progress when you run git clone. And I'm not disinclined to do that one as much as like it opens up a different Pandora's box of then I'm not doing just what you typed in Git or just what you typed in Git plus this PowerShell syntax stuff. I'm also doing behind the scenes magic that you might not have intended.
Yeah, and that's where I think you shouldn't do that within this module. We should leave the ecosystem that we already have in PowerShell with PS default parameter values. If somebody wants to do that in their all day day-to-day work.
Yeah, but you couldn't do that with PS default parameter values because you'd have to make PS default parameter values conditional on a regex of Git. Because there's only one command here, use Git. And you can't always pass double dash progress because not everything has progress.
Yeah.
And there is the rub.
And that's true, but I'm sure there's a way that we can work around it.
Yeah. I can see how I can work around it. I just am stuck on the ethical quandaries. And I don't think you're saying, hold up, ethical quandaries here. You're saying,
I think if you were to do it, it would be
carefully.
something along the lines of like Prettier, where you would have a separate config file that you could maybe manage those custom overrides. But I wouldn't recommend intermixing because it makes it become extremely confusing, especially to people that are just starting to learn Git. When do I use a parameter? When do I not use it? And when is it going to be filled in for me by uGit? Now it becomes all sorts of questions, but if you could, like Prettier is one module that just comes to mind where, you can go in and you can create a separate file to say, I want to, format certain things in certain ways. If there was a way to possibly support something along those lines, and then, Mike could have his custom .cfg file and create that override of an override, sure.
And I think one of the key things is that with anything like this is that we need to make sure that we're good with documentation.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be.
You've always been good from what I've seen over the years. You get there. Sometimes maybe need a little bit of editing here and there, but you're always.
I think I'm very hit and miss, so I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah.
I actually will highlight one other tool that's at play in the repository here, because I've also been getting mileage out of this. I built a alternative to Platypus called Helpout. So this is how I'm generating the documentation for this module, which gives me this wonderful folder. And actually, I haven't done this yet, but I wanted to go ahead and show how easy it would be. So let's go ahead and do this right now. Let's go to settings, pages, and make this a page. And go ahead and choose theme.
Architect's always a good theme.
All right, I will go with architect. It looks like it actually might do the syntax highlighting, so let's try that one. It's trying to commit it to GitHub branches, which I don't want. We'll see. But I believe now it'll be building the page. Yep. And in a few seconds, we should be able to actually see a GitHub page around this. So yeah, I've got this down to a pretty well-oiled machine. At this point, this is how I publish modules. I use PS DevOps to build their CI/CD. This is doing static analysis and testing on Linux, tagging, release, publishing it, using vSpil, running easy out, running help out. But yeah, it's nice to have your PowerShell game good or at a good point, especially if you have your CI/CD game effectively down as well. It means that you can just have a thought, do a little release, go on with your day. Okay. I would love to kind of get back to the slides just because I was like an inch away from one other plug.
Sorry.
It's okay. I do have a few more bits of the module that I wanted to cover as well, but I'm glad that you like it. It's very good. Just want to make sure you catch all the other joys that were used to build it. And one of the ones that I keep coming back to, even though I don't directly include it a lot, is irregular. Again, it's a virtual presentation, so I can't really do a show of hands. But if anybody has heard of irregular, chime in now.
Well, you covered this a little bit at the summit, so I have some familiarity from there. And so this is where Stephen Judd needs to pay attention.
Okay. So in the list of skills I've had to get good at over the years, even though I feel really weird about them, one of them is regex. And irregular is a module for managing regex. I have all sorts of built-in ones. Like, let's go ahead and look at PowerShell requires for an example. Got my nice formatting here too, so I've got a colorizer around your regex. And I can go ahead and pipe files here, see all the different modules that are at play. So, or you get in a couple of cases, help out, PS DevOps, and easy out. Actually, should put the requires on piecemeal as well. But as helpful as the built-in expressions are to irregular, new regex really is your friend. You can do something like new regex character class letter, repeat, and you can just kind of build out your regex from there by piping one to another. So a letter followed by a number. And actually, let's do one whole regex here. Let's not do the repeat here. We'll just call this new regex name bingo pattern. Is this okay? And 90. Go ahead and assign that up off to a variable. Oh. Better regex. Repeat. It's literal characters of bingo. There. But if I said A, that doesn't match. So this gives me a way to build out my regular expressions via pipeline. It also makes the whole syntax a little bit easier to kind of understand. I can do something like, back reference, look rounds. So this is handy. And this is how I end up getting to the point where I can have regexes like this inside of NuGet or inside of uGit. So if I look again at our ref log, I didn't just magically type all this out. I used new regex to get it to the point that I needed, and I put in some sample data, and I got it to work. So even though this one's not a visible dependency, it is a very helpful tool.
Another great.
That's again, GitHub, start automating irregular, and you were saying, Phil.
Oh, I was saying it's another great tool. Just laying another one right off the top. Cool. So good to go.
Cool. they're all intertwined. One of the things that PowerShell is very good at, especially if you really embrace it, is the virtuous cycle. I spent a lot of time building language tools for PowerShell, and every new language tool I have helps me build every other piece of PowerShell a little bit more effectively. And every new door that I open, if I open it correctly, it's a door that I can kind of continue to walk through in every other module. So extensibility is one great example of this. I ended up coming up with this approach for a module called Rough Draft, which is a wrapper for FFmpeg, because I didn't want to have 1,001 lines of argument transformation for different FFmpeg scenarios. And I wanted a way to not go nuts trying to organize them all. So I built this extensibility mechanism, and ever since I built it, I find here's another module that could be extensible. There's another module that could be extensible. Every time that I look at these things again, I come up with different scenarios that would help the whole. So validation is something that you get added to piecemeal. That the need to basically say, all right, I have all of these things that are related to uGit. Which one's the right one to run now? Irregular was really helpful and continues to be really helpful in building out the regexes, but it's not so helpful that I bother to ship it with it or even ship parts of it. I already covered that it was a module for regex. I covered the new regex is your friend. Now we get to the other fun part, getting sleek. The last bit of uGit's magic comes from the extended type system. This undersung part of PowerShell lets you define formatting methods or properties on types. This lets us show Git objects as sleek, colorized outputs. It also allows us to add script methods to Git output so we can run related commands, right? These are defined in uGit.format.ps1xml and uGit.types.ps1xml. ps1xml is hard. It is not a fun format to work with. Luckily, there's a really old useful tool called EasyOut. EasyOut makes fantastic formatting, and it is the oldest module. It actually was created, the first version of it, when modules were called packages, back when I was at Microsoft, and I've still built it ever since. It's still incredibly useful, and it abstracts writing, formatting, and types into commandlets. Like piecemeal, EasyOut is a build time module. That is to say, uGit is built with EasyOut, but uGit does not require you to install EasyOut. Everybody kind of with me?
No, say that again.
Okay. I make a number of tools, piecemeal and EasyOut being two of them, that are build time tools. That is, they help you build your PowerShell, but you don't require them when you ship your module.
Oh, I got it.
I think there's a typo in the slide.
There might well be.
uGit is built with EasyOut, but installing uGit does not require you to install EasyOut.
Let me fix that one because that one will bother me later.
It's
So it's a module that helps you build the ultimate module, not the other way around. Yeah.
Yes,
It builds your XML file, your PS types XML.
that is correct. And we're back. Now we're back, actually. And yes, sorry for the typo. Formatting and types can be defined in nice little small files. star.format.ps1 files beneath formatting and reviews will become format ps1xml, and directories beneath types will be treated as the type name. Get or set underscore property name will become a script property, and method.ps1 or whatever name ps1 will become a script method. Actions. All right. So first, we're going to go look at the ugly format file that's created from this. 2,000 lines of formatting code, and I never want to see it again. Bye. Okay, the less ugly types file. That's only a few hundred lines, because I don't find that many methods. I don't want to write those all in one file. I definitely don't want to write them in XML. I want to write them in PowerShell. So do you want to see types first or formatting first?
I think we've gone way down deep, but it's fun. Let's start with formatting.
All
I was
right.
going to say the same thing.
Okay. So let's take a look at something relatively simple. Let's take a look at how git log is formatted. There are actually 3 different formats for git log. Did you guys all know you can have multiple formatters for a type? Actually, 2 formatters for git log, 1 for a merge log.
No.
All right. So I did not think that you always needed to see the commit hash. So I have another formatter that lets you include the commit hash. This writes a format view for the type name git log with property git username, commit date, commit message, and wrap. By default, it'll be a table view. You could also say dash as list, which would make it a list view, or you could say dash custom, dash action, which would make it a custom view. And actions can render however you'd like. We're going to get to some really cool ones in a bit. 1 second. All right. So this is a nice little table view here. I'm going to take this back over to our Git here for a second, and git log format table name or view doesn't include commit hash. Not as nice of a view, which is why I normally just play. But the commit hash is still there, so I can still do stuff with it. This is actually a really important part of this sort of an approach. If I, again, look at a log, I have more information in a log than I'm displaying. In this case, I'm really only hiding the commit hash, well, and the user email, because the user email takes up a lot of space, the username takes up less, generally speaking. I also have the git root. I'm not displaying that for every object. I'm only displaying that at the top.
Yeah, so coming back to where we are at this point, and some people mentioned that kind of like deep in the weeds here. And so at this point, this formatting and right there, this right format view and all that kind of stuff, this is not being called at all during like go time at all. This generates that PS1, or actually, what's it called? Format that
PS1 XML.
Yeah, so all of these, you're looping through all these PS1s in this formatting format at build time to generate just for those who aren't understanding what's happening here, you get .format.ps1.xml.
Yep.
Right.
I've got the easy out action, and that's going to go look at and find any easy out files. And this one says, okay, you're going to go look in formatting and views, and I'm going to go grab any files that are there and import them. And I'm going to also look in the types directory, and I'm going to import any types view there. And if I had formatting defined, I'm going to write a format XML. And if I had types defined, I'm just going to write types XML. That's it.
So this is just how you created the module at that point. And then from there, it's just, you wouldn't come to this and modify, or we as a consumer wouldn't use this module and effectively modify the formatting without, because then you'd have to regenerate or we could modify formatting, and then we'd have to just call it easy out again.
Yeah, let's actually show this in action with types in a second, because it'll be kind of easier to see how it works end to end. There's a very easy thing that I can add. Okay. So if I go back here and I look at a more complicated formatter, let's say status, this is going to do a bunch of cool stuff. Okay. This is a custom view. I've got an action here saying exactly how I want to render it. I have the right format view expression again and again and again. This is a inner detail of how custom formatting works. Like if you've ever wondered how get help actually shows all the syntax that you see, it's a formatter. it's a complicated formatter like this one, but it's a formatter, and they go through expression after expression. Does the object look like this? Do that. Okay. So if I'm on a branch and the branch is not in main or master, then I'm going to use the foreground color verbose. And this is a really cool thing. This just basically lets you pop on colorization. When I say foreground color verbose, you can do verbose, warning, debug, error, any of the normal PowerShell streams. You can also do a hex color or a color like red. When you do this color format, it'll actually adapt to whatever color scheme you're using. So if I'm in terminal and I switch color schemes, it'll switch the color of the formatter for this as well, which is really cool. So I go basically write out what the branch name in whatever color I choose, write a new line. Then if I don't have status, then if it's not like nothing, then I go ahead and write the status. If I was staged, I write the changes not staged for commit message. And I write, if I was staged again, here's this little mini object of what was staged, the change type and path. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller than normal when displaying its table formatter. And then this is a little bit of kind of bizarre regex magic, but basically go split the lines so I can indent them. So that I'm unstaged, I have a different message, slightly different logic. Untracked, I go write out each untracked file, and then I write this if they have nothing to commit. So it's only about 40 lines. Now, I don't want to know how many lines that it turns into. We can find out, though, really quickly. Let's just, actually, I've already got the file here. Why bother doing that? Import module easy out. And git. Yeah. So 44 lines versus 45 kilobytes. Which would you rather type? Or sorry, 4.5 kilobytes. I would rather type the 44 lines, personally.
So
Maybe I'm just crazy.
Just a quick question, James.
Yeah.
A lot of us have used PoshGit over the years. Would you say that this module now actually is sort of superseded the abilities it has?
I would hope so. I don't use PoshGit that actively. I think you might have missed the earlier part where I had indicated that EasyOut was used to help build PoshGit's formatting, but that's the extent of interaction I've had with it. I've never been a regular avid PoshGit user. But uGit, yeah, that's indispensable to me now.
Something else that I needed to deal with as well at the same time. So I've been multitasking. So I probably did miss a little bit earlier, but yeah, and maybe I'll get rid of PoshGit and use uGit instead.
Fair to summarize, your PS1 XML files, the real reason for those is that you're using those to basically set your default output and what comes back so that folks don't have to pipe select object and then the 15 properties that they want. You're defining the 5 common ones that you think are most relevant.
Yeah, and that's what Git is doing too, most of the time. Like they're showing you 5 or 6 properties that they think are important in the format they want to show you. And I can disassemble that and reassemble it a different way. I don't really want to be that different from format, but I do want better format. I mean, like, let's again get status here. All right, and remove module uGet. And get status again. Okay, so they show this in red. I like my branch hint. I like this less amount of code and fewer lines used. I don't think I really want to recommend that somebody does either of these things, actually. So yeah, I like my formatting more. I like the control over formatting a lot more, though. To round out how else this is working, though, let's look at types and let's try to add a practical example. We can do our, homework in a second, but let's take a look at git log in particular. Okay, so one property is added here and 5 methods are added. The type name is derived from the directory name. So this will be writing a type view that will apply to git log. Okay. Technically, I think these also apply to deserialized logs. So if you exported CLI XML git log, you brought it back in, it should work. But if they don't, let me know. All right. Get reference numbers is really easy. They got a little bit of regex that says, hey, do I have a pound sign followed by a series of digits in the commit message? Okay, go replace the digit or pound sign and turn it into an int array. So git log, select object, expand property. Go back through all the different issues that I've ever talked about. That's how you add a property to it. And good example of one of the properties you could add. You could also add properties that would go run another git command if you'd like, though those could potentially be destructive. So I'd want you to put them into a method. And in terms of the methods, we've got a few simple ones. They're all pretty easy, actually, in this case. Because basically what I'm doing here is I'm realizing a lot of commands can just do their thing based off of a commit hash, and I can still pass whatever other arguments you sent. So that's all that I need to do for git def is I need to go push into that git root so that it always runs. Even if you were in some other directory, it's going to go to the right spot and run on the right repo, and then run git def and then pop back. So again, logs is that. If I go look at logs 50, diff it to now. That's everything changed from that point. Or actually, if I wanted to do something simpler, let's say where object commit date is greater than 3. I'm now add months -1. So what did I change in the last month?
So just in other contexts, I love watching other people write their code because that where object is just interesting to like, oh, that's how you can created it on the fly. And so I thought that was fairly interesting, or I like that. I always enjoy, digging into other people's code and what they're doing. And I never thought to actually call date now and then add time to it.
I do all sorts of funny things in the pipeline.
Yeah. Well, as opposed to get date, and then I do get date. I do the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess this is as good of a time to mention as any. I generally, despite loving the hell out of commandlets, try to avoid using them if I'm writing code because it's generally faster to not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a
I'm
perfect
just voicing
rule.
that there are other ways to do it, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way, and I think I like your way.
Yeah,
it's kind of clear now.
But yeah, that's yet another example of what we can do with it. And let's try to kind of round the bend and add one more. So if I go look at our git ref log, well, I should have a commit hash with each of these, right? In case they're just called hash. Let's go ahead and try using this git diff. Okay. So I can already do that with this thing. All right. Let's actually make my ref log a little bit nicer And I'm going to file a couple of issues here just to kind of do my paperwork right. Issue number 1 is add script methods to get reflog. Get reflog has hashes and thus can do what get log. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and add one more here to say alias. Yeah. Commit hash property for get. Commit hash is used elsewhere and would your property name to expect. Therefore, we should alias commit hash. I could do this the other way around, but I'm just showing off types for a second. Okay, so I got 2 issues. Let's check what branch I'm on. Let's get off main. I can type, I swear. All right. Don't have anything there yet. Let's make dir get.reflog. Now let's get my naming convention right. These are lowercase, so do get.reflog.
I'm just going to say, James, that everybody has that problem with typing at one time or another. You know.
Oh yeah. And I'm actually going to double check before I go there. I think I actually gave them a nicer format or name than that. Yes, I did. I called them get reference logs. Did I already make my directory? No. Okay. We're going to do a few things here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a magic file called alias.psd1. That magic file is supported by easy out to go alias or define alias properties. And I'm going to say that commit hash is equal to hash. Okay. Part 1. Ready for the lazy part? I'm going to do this in Explorer because I'm not always a pure PowerShell nerd. Reval there too. Pop all those in because they all have a commit hash. I should be able to basically use that particular commit hash for each of these things now. And hit add types, get dot reference log. And I'm actually going to just add the whole directory and explain in my commit message. For get log, and this fixes
You've got adding typing.
61 and 62.
You've got an extra E in that message.
Actually, I'm now going to save this for a second because I wanted to do this earlier here. So 61, and I'm actually going to make another purposeful mistake here, 63. Oh crap, I got it wrong. Oh no, whatever shall I do? Number 62. I love the demo gods hate me, that's what I'll do. There we go. Okay, so I've got my amended commit there. That's wonderful. I'm ready to go with that. I'm going to go ahead and push. And we're going to see what ends up happening. Remember I said I have a GitHub action that'll run easy out? This is actually why I've been very tempted to write a script to wait for Git stuff, because sometimes just do this. Are we there yet? 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 We're there. So now I've got a Git ref log, pipe it to get member. Boom.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. All right, so now that I got that done, let's go into my uGit.psd1 here. Bump my module version. Go down to my private data. Pop that back in. 0.2.3. Git log where it's not merged. Object expand property commit. I don't think I need to actually get that complicated here. Change log, pop that in there too.
Sorry,
We want to add a shout out to the user group in here. These are commit messages for posterity.
sorry. I was just watching that. When you did that on the command line, did that just change the changelog MD file?
I open changelog.md. I could add content to it, but that would be adding it to the wrong spot. I wanted it at the top, not the bottom, and I haven't actually written that very simple command. Why have I not written that very simple command yet? Anyway, yeah, I'm just adding the note that I added in 2 places and changing my version.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna git diff one more time. Yeah, I got my module version change. Yeah, I've got my change to private data. No, I don't have my change to changelog yet. I haven't saved that. There we go. Git add uGit.1 and changelog and git commit updating module version 0.2.3 and changelog. Push. Wait for a minute or two while this runs. And once it's done, we get the really satisfying joy of closing out our issues. And the other satisfying joy of CI/CD working as intended. I'm really jinxing it now, by the way.
You know, it's a watched pot. That's how it works.
Indeed. All right, so just a little bit more. Fun factoid, which I feel a little bit silly sharing, but you actually get this badge if you don't wait. If you click, commit, even though you're pretty sure things will work. So yeah, I'm just gonna wait the extra number of seconds. We're done doing static analysis. Almost done testing. Come on, Pester. Come on. Doesn't even have tons of tests there. All right, so now that's done. Let's go back to our PR. Oh, we don't have one yet. Oopsie. Create that pull request there. And we're gonna wait for a couple more commits. Looks like our page stuff is ready now as well. And when that's done, what that's actually going to do is it's going to check to see if I go look at my actual build here. Tag, release, and publish is going to go check. Hey, have been merged. All right. If I have been, go tag this module version. If it wasn't a tag, already make a tag for it. Then go release to GitHub. Then go release to PowerShell gallery. But right now it's not merged, so it's not doing any of those. And we got another 30 odd seconds to wait. Sorry, I have to fill a bit of air this way. But it is a relatively well-oiled machine. One other thing I will briefly point out while we wait a few more seconds for that to finish is that uGit itself is also available as a GitHub action. So if you just wanted to use uGit to do some reporting on a repository, have at it. Already on. All right, this is done. Merge my PR. Delete that branch. Go back over to here. Nervously wait. Last release was 8 days ago. Refresh. 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 It's normally pretty quick, unless I forget to actually do the module version bump, but I'm pretty sure we did that today. I'm impatient. There we go. We're out. And we got GitHub pages set up this time. See how that actually looks. Could use a better README. But yeah, there we go. We've released a new version of uGit in a talk about uGit. How crazy is that?
Awesome.
Back to finish off the slide deck. You guys all get it now? Walk through how uGit works from beginning to end. We send out intercept commands. Learn how to build piecemeal and make our modules extensible. We've improved our regex skill set with a regular at our side. We've seen how to make sleek output with easy out. And we've shown there's way more than one way to build a module and skin a cat. I'll get it. Any questions? I'm done with the slide deck now.
No, thank you so much there, James. This was, we certainly went the gambit here, and I think a lot of people, gathered a lot of information, and I think the community is certainly better for it. So I thank you so much for your time tonight.
No worries. I think we're already over time, so I don't know if we want to go into any bonus rounds or anything like that, but I'm open if you guys are.
No, I think we've done very well. Any other questions from the community?
Well, why don't we do this? So first off, I also want to say thank you to James. Man, really fun ride tonight to watch all this stuff come together. I think the one thing that I take away from this overarching thing is it's been very, well, maybe this isn't the right thing to say, but there's not often that I see modules that I kind of can't wait to kind of dig into and try to use, right? And so that's the one big takeaway from this is that, man, there's a lot in that uGit module that I'd love to unpack and start to learn and use. So that's how to build it and stuff was all really interesting. But for me, I just want to start using it. So that's the big thing. So really appreciate your efforts tonight. I think you've created some fantastic code there. Obviously, a lot of talent. Appreciate you sharing your information, your knowledge with us. Why don't we wrap up the recording here? And so we'll just summarize for the people that have made it this far. If you're watching on YouTube, you're at the Research Triangle PowerShell user group, and we're going to wrap up this recording. But what happens now is that the people that are here, we will talk and conversate about different topics. Maybe we'll talk with James about a few of the things he presented. Maybe we'll talk about other things. So the takeaway for you as the person watching at home is we'd love for you to come and join our user group, and you can be here in person and ask the questions yourself. If you'd like to do that, you can find out more about our user group at rtpsug.com, or you can find us on Meetup. We are the Research Triangle PowerShell user group, and we'd love to see you next time. Our big thanks go out to James Brundage tonight for the amazing job he did presenting tonight. Please check out our channel. We have over 100 videos all related to PowerShell, there's something out there for you to watch. We'll send you some suggestions. Thanks for watching tonight, and we'll see you soon.